Welcome to Selling Seven Figures Top Performers Tell All, hosted by Kevin Mullaney. Each month, we're diving deep to uncover the secrets of selling big, closing smart, and hitting your highest goals. One guest, one mission. Let's make more money. Ready? Let's go. Let's go.
Welcome to Selling Seven Figures. My name is Kevin Mullaney. I sound like the guy that the Beastie Boys were talking about, Fight for Your Right to Party. I'm the dad that sounds like the guy, that hypocrite that's been smoking 2 packs a day. But we're working through some things over here, okay? And with me is a longtime legend here in the promotional marketing, brand and merchandise industry, Barrett Hubbard with DLA Promotions. Barrett, how are you today, brother?
Hey, Kevin, how are you? Legend, that's a lot.
Legend's a lot. This guy's been helping me out with my golf grip and my golf swing when he's not helping his clients reach their branded goals. So excited to have you on. How are you today? Everything's good?
Doing good. Like I said, we're all fighting the same allergies. I think, our cars are all yellow here. So
it's pollen season. That rain wasn't bad for us, but I'm happy we're having it. Let's get on and get through it, just like the rest of the hard parts in life, right?
That's right. You got it. Just keep going.
Excellent. All right, so we always ask the same thing. We want to get an understanding about this nice little beautiful behind the veil industry that we both know and love. How did you get involved and how long you've been doing it, if that's okay to ask?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess I got involved about 15 years ago, and I was fortunate to run into a couple of folks that I think were fairly visionary in the promotional products business. They had grown an organization to about 12 or 13 million dollars and 10 or 15 sales reps, and just needed a little different leadership. And they invited me in, and actually it was interesting. I would describe it as, they had 2 of them, and some of the reps would run to one and some would run to the other, and it became this sort of divisive thing for the answer you wanted. So they wanted somebody to say, hey, there's one way to do it, and sort of come in here and straighten it all out. Not straighten it all out, because it wasn't a mess. It just needed a different sort of leadership approach, maybe. And so we did that, and I worked with them, and we took it up to $40-ish million and 40 or 50 reps around the country. And then they sold that off and gave me a vacation for a couple of years, and that was fine. That was fine. They treated me great. And then I ran into this gig. So that's kind of what happened. That's how I got in the business, which is like a lot of it. I think there's a lot of fortuitousness in our industry about how people get in.
Which is a really great story, and very fascinated in this conversation that you basically put yourself as like the au pair of that old client and friend of ours, which is really funny. Barrett's wife is a teacher, elementary school teacher, has been for years and years and years. So I think she'll get a kick out of this when she talks about this one. But yes, my kids definitely go to me when they don't get the answer they want from mom. Yep. So I completely get it. Exactly. Sales reps are the worst with that, right? Like, Barrett said we could do it. It's like, well, that's because I told you couldn't. That's frustrating. All right. You've got a really unique thing going on, okay? It's very rare. I don't know if it's been done before. So I do want to talk a little bit before we get about sales and how we can sell big deals and the best way about being creative in the sales process. You work for DLA Promotions. What does DLA stand for? Let's start there.
So the DLA in our name of DLA Promotions stands for Donate Life America. So we're essentially a wholly owned subsidiary of a nonprofit. So DLA is a 501c3. We're actually a for-profit. Our financials are essentially combined and underwritten the same at the end of it, audited, the whole thing. Maybe not audited, but reviewed certainly. And it's just kind of neat. The question of whether there's another one of these, I would say, I always like to be careful when we say we're the only. I have not heard of a fully philanthropic promotional products distributor. Certainly our industry's done a fabulous job of giving back across, whether it's supplier product, whether it's, people get back a percentage of a certain time. Sometimes there's rebates sort of behind it, sort of give back. There's been some things, but we literally are running it like a promotional products company. The only difference, we're returning all the profits back to Donate Life America. And that's sort of what I call their 3 feet. So our job is to run a promo company and run it well, grow that, make it profitable, and then return the dividends back to Donate Life America. my board, a subset of the Donate Life board is on my board. So I do all the business planning, and if we're doing increases or if I want more money, whatever, they have to sign off on it. So it's all sort of a controlled structure, but we run like any other promotional products business, except truly we're fully philanthropic. We just give it all back. And it's funny, every now and then we'll go into a client and say, well, if you're giving it all away, how you stay in business? Well, we're paying everybody.
Yeah.
And we keep cash in the company. It's just a matter of what pace the dividends go out at. But on our website, we have a counter. And I think we're coming up on $500,000 since 2022 is when we started.
Exceptional. That's really cool. One, I love the counter. I think one of the things that people, when we started getting involved in my own business, it was Mike who thought of it, but we went and we saw someone speaking in Inc. 5000 conference. It was Charity Water. Right. And one of the things that he had found out, there's fabulous research, and again, you're probably keen to all of this, that a lot of people don't trust nonprofits or won't donate because they don't know exactly where the number is going. Is that fair? So I think the calendar helps, right? And then also, I think, do you guys do a set, like, is it 10 cents on the dollar? It's exactly that? So
the industry has an interesting sort of data set on this. And I think it's PPAI had this maybe a year or two ago, that the range of quote unquote profitability for promo companies was somewhere around 7 cents up to about 12 cents on the dollar. I'm sure some do more and some do less. But if you average out 7 and 12, sort of that's about a 19 cents. I just rounded to 20. That I feel like a 10-cent return based on the risk profile, what we're doing is a fair return, right? So one of my former employees had what I call a model for profit. And actually, if you're running a promo company, what I would tell you is you should have a model for profit and then obviously budget back to that model. So if you want to make 15 cents on the dollar, then you got 85 cents then to go figure out how to run the rest of the business, because 15 cents is supposed to drop out. And so we use 10 cents. We know that some years it may be 12 or 13 or 14 cents, and some years it might be 8 or 9, depending on what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, if we're investing in our people and we're investing in things like benefits, which are obviously incredibly expensive and things like that, you may have a little lower returns, but over time, and that's, I think, the key thing, our return model is 10 cents. And we've pretty much been hitting that, a little under it, but not enough to matter. And what I kind of like to think, and you never want to take this for granted, but whether we are, I'll say, grateful enough to return 8 cents or 10 cents back to Donate Life America, they're still pretty happy with the revenue stream over time. And that's really what we're trying to build, right? So when I started this, one of my first objectives was to try to get us to $10 million. So we are about, we're going to be, I'll call it 50.4% the way there, probably by certainly this year on a rolling 12 month. We might hit 6 by the end of this month. And that's in, like I said, since 2022. And then my next one was, and this one's kind of funny, was to get one rep in every state that does $1 million. And so when we do bring on reps, the first thing I try to do to them is sort of say, my goal for you is to get you to $1 million. It's not a demand. It's sort of a partnership, right? It's how do we do that? How do we do that over time? You have a great platform from a marketing perspective to work with. You have great technology. You've got investments in you and how you run your business or your little area. And let's go build that. And, when this day and age, like I said, of, work-life balance and doing those things, I think that culture is a sustainable culture for everybody. And I think they feel good too, that there's not, I don't mean that, look, owners take a lot of business risk. So anything I say does not discount people who have invested in a business, but they feel good about the idea there's not an owner that's just building another beach house, that they're giving back. And so I think it actually helps them be more patient when times are bad, and just take a longer term approach to things. And again, that's just my take. I'm not saying that's all my reps, if you interview them, would feel that, but I kind of think they would.
A couple of things that I wanted to talk about. One, I think you've got a slogan that you have. It's pretty simple, and I don't have your signature. It's like buy swag, save lives, or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. We started with interesting, because like a lot of things in the world, there's iterations, right? People could play with what we do in terms of giving back a lot. So the first one was bringing business to life, which was kind of a cool one. A little long.
Hey, is that ChatGPT? Is this all off the cuff? This is good.
It's Barrett GPT. Back then, we did not have, when we first started.
I like that.
You didn't have it. So we had bringing business to life, and life was underlined, kind of like the Donate Life logo a little bit.
Yeah. Cool.
And so then we wanted something a little more, frankly, catchy and simple. And I said, look, people are really, I tell clients this, that every logo we do for you is going to be saving lives. So you're buying swag and saving lives. And would it be too much to say that's a good thing, right? It's a seamless way for clients to get the same products at the same prices, elegantly delivered, and they're giving back and saving lives.
Yeah, this is interesting, and I hope a lot of people are kind of grasping onto this. I think another thing that you said, and we're not trying to, this isn't, not trying to get a political, this is not the No King's March here, just to be clear here. However, another thing that we talk about is like, all right, do you want to save lives, or do you want to buy and own or another boat or something along those lines, right? And yeah. I think what breaks down to this is two ways. One, so if I'm the buyer, right, and I've got two proposals in front of me, and let's just say the pricing is exactly the same, and it's going to Mulaney Enterprises or it's going to DLA Promotions. Kevin's a good guy, want to take care of his family, right? No one's thinking about that, by the way, when they're buying. Let's just be honest about what I'm going to do with that $1 million order, right? But that one's kind of a little bit of a, well, why not, right? Like, right. And again, just like everybody else in this industry, we're going to try a new vendor or any industry. They've got to be able to do what they're going to say they're going to do, better hold up the same. And I think that's what makes this whole industry really, I guess the best way to say is attainable for newer comer folks is that it's all coming from the same place. It's how you're managing the order, coming up with the creativity, which obviously you clearly have a ton of with that. The next thing, and again, we're supposed to be talking to you, not me, is the sales rep, right? Like when you put your head down on your pillow, you're all, going after the same thing. But to say, okay, great, I put up $1 million this year. I put up $2 million this year. That equals X going over to, Donate Life America, which is pretty rad, right? And hopefully they have that sense of fulfillment. Other thing that I wanted to talk about with kind of the industry as a whole, and it's interesting because you talk about risk because you come from a risk background. So real quick on your background, because in my opinion, you're not necessarily a salesperson, but you're a great salesperson. Mm-hmm. Where's your background from to give people a little context?
Yeah, I actually sort of the property and casualty insurance business was where I came from. And there's, both in terms of what I call the operational side and the sales side, there's similarities because you're getting data in an insurance world. You could have a building that somebody's insuring or a doctor for their liability, and they're just giving you an application that has lots of information on it. And in this case, when we go to a client and we say, hey, we want this, I need your artwork, I need your logos, I need you to pick a product, I need to price it, I need to deliver it, I need to understand all the little variables that need to then come together. And there's actually this sort of similarity, but also the part that gets missed is that there is risk in our business, and that risk is usually underpriced, frankly. Probably, in my opinion, the biggest risk factors, being part of big buying groups certainly reduces some of that risk, no doubt about it. I think in this day and age, the biggest risk factor is web stores. And then, of course, the range of solutions that are out there, ranging from when you take inventory and you own that inventory, again, probably the highest level of risk. And the funny thing about our business, and I've said this for years, in every other business, if you take more risk, you should get what? Higher return. In this industry, we've never really done that. It's hard to go to a client and say a web store is a riskier proposition, which if you explain that to them correctly, they would agree with that. There's cyber risk, there's transaction risk. They worry about all kinds of pieces of that. And yet we can't go, hey, I need that to be at, there's warehousing risk and inventory risk. There's tons of little elements inside of a web store transaction that are different than a dropship transaction. Yet we strive, or we end up charging very close to the same. Not always, not everybody, but it's one of those areas that the industry has struggled with. And I get it, right? Clients struggle to understand the difference of getting one at a time versus getting 50 at a time or 100 at a time. And one of the things that's happening, again, the ability to have MOQs of one is fascinating, but we're either going to violate the laws of physics or the laws of finance eventually if we're not careful. But it's kind of cool, some of the things I've seen the industry do to get one item out in the last, I'll say 2.5 to 3 years. It's kind of amazing that we're doing that. But yeah. I'm not sure
I
that's
think
going
back
to
to the Org Audio, sorry to cut you off there, but like to give a little plug, but like the Org Audios of the world, right? The now Rupt of the world.
Yep.
Those guys understand that was the best thing in the world because someone just needed one. And that doesn't really happen in that industry. But, the person who's retiring or someone who went above and beyond, you just want to show them some love and you do want it to be branded merch versus just an Amazon gift card or something like that, which is maybe a little less personal. But you want that person to look down at that item and then be like, I got this because I did this, right? Whether they were trying to get an award or not, they were just being acknowledged. It is interesting to see how that goes. And then, yes, the web stores are really the hardest thing to sell. It's a unique thing when you have a product that everyone wants or is asking for, and the person that they're coming to ask for it is typically trying to tell you that you don't want that, which is fair, right? You go to an auto dealership, you walk in, you say, I want a store where all of my clients could buy a car from you. Okay, great. How does that look for you? How do you make money, et cetera, right? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to have all these different cars for all different employees. And you want me to hold the inventory, and I'm not sure if any of these people are actually going to buy it or not. I don't know if that's going to be profitable for us, right? And I think thought about it as a car dealership, but that's probably a good way of looking at it without the scary price tag. Fair?
Well, I think that's part of the dialogue. And this is where, again, how companies decide to do this or reps, but that I'll just say how we do it because I don't want to. There's lots of ways to run good businesses, but when there's a web store, the first time that word is mentioned, what we really say, I compare it to my favorite analogy is an operating room. And if you're going in to have knee surgery, there's the orthopedic guy that's repairing your knee, but there's also a guy there who's going to put you to sleep. And that guy is a different expert. And so that's what we do. We bring in our team. And so and we don't know, and matter of fact, we don't really want our reps to get into it with clients. We want to say, let us understand what they're trying to accomplish and why, and then we'll get back to you with what we believe is the right solution. So here's, again, another one of those things, and I probably have said this to you, but I say it to our sales team all the time, that we need to also be in the business of managing clients. We try not to let clients manage us. And that is a tricky thing to do because the instinct, and I totally understand this, is to say yes to everything to try to get the sale done. Actually, and it sounds weird, I still believe that's not a good idea, not because of the risk it puts on us, that you're really doing a disservice in terms of understanding the client's needs, taking a breath and saying to them, what are you trying to do? And we'll tell clients, so here's, Kevin, you and I have done this, where they come in and HR says, look, we have people and they want to just buy one thing. Their husband or wife saw it, and we don't want a store, and they keep calling us. And what we say to people is, nicely, of course, we say, we can do those stores. So I didn't say I'm not doing it. I just said, but they always fail. And here's why they fail. They fail because you're asking the buyer to whip out their credit card to market somebody else's company. And that's a tough thing to sell them. But when you say it to them in that way, you didn't say no. You just said, here's the honest truth about what their perception was one thing. You have to give them new information in a new way to get them to go, wow, maybe we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And like I said, if they really want it, and the other thing I do depends on the size of the client, right? So if it's generating $100,000 of gross profit, I got a lot more oxygen in the room. If they're, $1,000 client, I'm not sure you want to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we talk about boutique firms or agencies or people that only do this type of, media buying, whatever it may be. You can really put yourself out there if you try to be Walmart for everybody, if that's fair, versus focusing on what you're great at. Anyways, it's a fascinating story. And again, we could do a whole different podcast on web stores. And again, we would lose followers daily, I will say, because it is a tough thing to talk about. But you do talk about something that I do enjoy. You're always very transparent on both sides of the ball. Okay. And I think that's very helpful when you're sitting down and you're talking about pricing, which is oftentimes a conversation that when you're trying to get new business with a client, right? Old clients, they come to you, they say, Barrett, I need a table throw, I need an umbrella, I need it by this date. That's pretty transactional, pretty easy once they've gained the relationship. But in new business, people always ask, like, well, what's your pricing like, right? I think you do a great job of breaking it down on when you're having that first meeting with the client, specifically with how it relates to DLA and your nonprofit. I want you to talk about that, and then I'll dig into how you talk about how you pay your reps, which is also interesting for this industry.
So, at the end of the day, I think a lot of clients, because we're giving back, they ask us a question, which is an interesting question. And if you answer this question, they'll usually go deeper, not always, but they'll come to us and say, well, how much is going back? If I spend $30,000 annually on swag or merch, how much is coming back to Donate Life America? And again, we use 10 cents on the dollar. And so when you do that, some people will go, well, how do you get there, right? So they want more specifics. And the good news in the industry, and a lot of times I will be very specific with clients because that data is out there, and they want to know. They're asking almost a very specific questions. And what I find is when I do have that conversation, that the industry prices within a pretty normalized range. We all know that I would say 90 to 95% of the orders are in that sort of 10% range back and forth that we price. And so on one hand, that's good news. And so it kind of gets us all in the same place anyway. And to a large degree, when they realize you're only making 10 cents, that's what's going back after you pay everybody and you pay benefits and the light bill and the rent and all that stuff, they kind of go, okay. They don't feel like that's a usurious moment, right? So for getting their swag, getting it delivered, that we're us making 10 cents feels pretty good. And I totally understand it's a different model because we're fully philanthropic, and that's hard to say if you were a for-profit piece. Certainly, there's all the kind of words about, we're always competitive and all those kind of things you can say. There's just only so many ways to spin it. We're a little bit fortunate. We can spin it a little differently and be very transparent with our clients. The other thing we will do, which is interesting, and again, not impossible to do, if we're working with a nonprofit entity, we will actually give back 5% of the gross profit of anybody they refer to us.
Love that. Yeah.
So you give up a little, and it's got to be a nonprofit or a foundation. So we don't just do this, it's not like a rebate really. And honestly, it's 5% of gross profit. So they're literally fully aligned with us, right? The interest of everybody is aligned. So sometimes the board of directors has a tremendous number of contact points that they could refer to you. And again, it's all starting to be a virtuous cycle of good, that they're getting something, we're getting something, and they're getting their swag and their merch. So it works really, really well. I don't know if that answered your question directly, but
no, it did. Again, we're going to break it down on the other side of it as well. We're going to really get behind the curtain, but the whole story kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie with Jonah Hill, War Dogs, where they're just like first time they're pitching to the Pentagon. And they're like, guys, you won the bid, like by a lot. And Jonah Hill's like, just out of curiosity. And they were like, you were 43 million lower than the next lowest person. And then it just cuts to a screen of him just like punching himself in the face in the hallway, like, you idiot, right? Oh. Which is interesting because you nailed it, right? The variables and the variances. So when you lose a bid that you went after and you were really competitive on, there are some head scratchers, and I'm sure you've run into them in your industry. Like, how did we lose that one, right? Like, we leaned on every poll and every relationship we could to get that price where it was, and we still, So anyways, pricing is interesting, and again, I'm interested to see how that works out. Finally, we're talking about sales reps, right? And I say that there's probably anywhere between 3 and 4 actual comp plans that are in this industry. I'd like to say the same is probably for like the car industry. The real estate agency took the biggest, not black eye, just transparent bifocals on it, where they said, you don't owe this person anything. It's all negotiated. When it used to be a standard, let's just call it 4% buyer and seller side. Okay. Now, our industry, sales reps typically make, either a flat salary, salary plus commission, commission only, and then there's the variable based on fairly often profit margin. When you talk about with a sales rep, someone's interested, someone's one of those people that's trying to be your $1 million rep in another state for the first time. How exactly do you shake that out? Because I think it's very similar with the transparency you bring in front of the client. Fair?
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I still come back to, look, there's 100 cents in the dollar. And so those dollars, and again, in the real world, once you get started, if I say I got to make 10 cents, I got 90 cents. So you can almost start to do your own math on what makes sense. And you can, and again, the industry over time, and especially we're part of a big buying group, so we get a lot of, pretty good data that you kind of know where the guardrail is and where everyone's going to play.
Yep.
And so when I'm talking to a rep, you can certainly be flexible. I call it in year 1, year 2, but you need to come back to a plan that is fair for everybody, that's sustainable, and that everybody kind of for lack of a better word, they understand what we're trying to do and we understand what they're going to do. And so there's like I said, there's one hand, there's no magic that at the end of the day, you're going to be in that, whether you pay a straight commission, salary plus commission, the net of that is going to be in that sort of guardrail. It almost can't get out of it. Now you can certainly do some creative things if people grow dramatically and some incentives in those ways. But I just try to people like anything else, two things. One, I think they're going to have a great marketing message, and that's huge for them. And if they believe in that, I think they'll do really well in client acquisition, which for me, client acquisition is like, honestly, the probably most important thing in this industry. Once you have good financials, good technology, you can handle web stores. If you've got that sort of as the base of the pyramid, almost everything above that is either finding new clients or taking care of your existing clients. The other thing we do that might be a little different, we try to go to every one of our reps and give them essentially a sales and marketing bank.
Yeah.
That bank is not their money, so to speak. It's not compensation, but it's to achieve those two objectives, right? And it's based upon their sales and how they're doing. So it's very fair. It's very, you've earned whatever bank you get. So if you have a rep that's doing $1 million, we'll give that rep somewhere in that $10,000 to $12,000. That becomes their marketing budget. And I'll usually sit down with them and say, how do you want to allocate this, both in terms of to which client, and then client acquisition and or business retention. And that becomes, again, I'm going to use that word, I want my reps to be as entrepreneurial as possible. There's a new book out, and I haven't read it yet, although I read Elon Musk's biography, but he talks about his algorithm. I don't know if you've heard this. And it's, on one hand, it's interesting. I don't know how deep this book goes. I'll have to read it. I haven't read it yet, but he really talks about really pushing down, empowering the frontline people to do the things within some framework, right? So it's not insanity, but it has some framework of efficiency, bureaucracy. Can it be more cost effective to take reasonable risks? And when I do these things, that's what I want my reps doing. So we had a rep in Nashville that wanted to join a convention and visitors bureau at a level that was pretty high. And I just had a conversation with him, and it wasn't a challenge. It was just more, is this the thing that you believe is going to make your year? Like when you look back at it, you're going to, because again, I'll go to that well with you. We're going to the well together on spending $5,000 or $6,000. I said, but you got to believe it. I want you to believe it.
Yeah.
It sounds funny. I'm okay if I'm skeptic. But if you're telling me, I believe this is the most important thing, then you're going to spend this money somewhere. Well, this is what you believe in, then go make it happen.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're not betting the farm. It's not the end of the world. If it had a zero return, we'll certainly learn something. We're going to learn a little something, but that's what he felt. And that was fine. But my conversation with him was to be sure he loved it.
Yeah.
Right. Not that I loved it, that he thought this is the thing that's going to make me have a good year. And that's kind of how I sort of try to manage my reps. And, like any comp model, if you do it right, we're more than happy to have our reps do amazingly well. That's really the bottom line. We really don't care. As I say, you can make more than me. That's totally fine. We have no issue with that whatsoever. And that's a matter of fact, because if they're doing well, Donate Life's doing well, DLA Promotions is doing well, it'll all come together. So.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And it's the reason why I want to kind of talk about the value of the dollar in this industry, because the title of the podcast is called Selling Seven Figures. We never really talked about why that is. We talk about the $1 million rep. That is the threshold of excellence, I guess would be the best way to say that you made it mark. And the reason why that mark is important is, again, everything Barrett was talking about is really, it's skewed and variable on 5 to 10% of a number, right? But basically what we're saying is why Barrett wants 50 of those and one needs, say, one, it's obtainable, two, it's reachable, it's proven. And then the numbers, when they break down, that means that rep is making money, a comfortable life, fair, right? We can always make more. We can always, there's more to be had, more Bitcoin to be mined.
Yep.
But the company's making money too, right?
Yes.
And it takes a lot of time, and this just sales in general, right? Turnover costs, the cost to replace an employee. It's really, really difficult when you invest the amount of time and money into a rep. They're literally probably not making the business too much money, aka profitable, which is what we're all trying to do in business, until really they hit that mark. Obviously, that's open for negotiation based on markup, this, that, the other. But that's the reason why we talk about selling 7 figures and why it's so important in this industry. That is why President's Club, Achievers Club, $1 Million Club, literally, if you look across the $28 million or $1 billion industry now, it literally is the mark of what people are looking for as far as to determine success. So again, thank you for kind of breaking that down. Thank you for telling the DLA story. To kind of closing remarks here.
Hey, Kevin, real quick on that, and on the selling, and I still come back to this when I talk to reps a lot. And having had probably, I don't know how many I've met or how many have been, I'll say, under my direct leadership, if you will, but I tell them one of the key things is if you look out at what we would call, and you've been around the business, but if somebody said, what does your perfect book of business look like? Right. And I love that question because it sort of starts to set the stage. Well, how do I build that? And I've always said, and this isn't quite right because nothing is as clean as what we model, right? The world's messy, but we can make stuff look really neat when we're just modeling it. So if I had 30 accounts, each doing $30,000, right? I'm at $1 million essentially, right? But we'll say 33,000 just to, if anybody's out there nickel and diamond or doing the math. But the real point about that is that I think the journey, depending on where you are, roughly to $1 million, and we have this happen. I tell people in our industry, it's a 36 months journey. And if you're all in on the industry and you're starting to build, you then every year, it sounds funny, you want to have somewhere between 12 and 15 new clients that either can or will do in excess of that $30,000. Now, does that mean they all have to be $30,000 clients? No, it does not. You're going to have some 5,000 and 18,000, 20,000. But at the end of the day, you do want to march that way. And there's 2 reasons for it, I think. One is that your work-life balance will be better with 30 accounts versus 100 accounts that you're dealing with this sort of noise down here. And, people talk about culling it. There's all kinds of things in those worlds about culling your bottom 10% to give you that extra time. But one of my favorite lines is I said, first, have that vision of what you want your book of business to look like. And it could be by industry and by size. And then march that way incrementally every month, every week, every day, and just head that way. And in 3 years, you're going to have that. Yeah. But you're always pushing on it, right? One of the terms I use here, we're like a glacier. I'm not looking to be anything fast. We just want to keep going. Yeah. And then I divide the glacier into areas of our business. And in sales, you can do the same thing, right? So how good am I at our employee benefits? How good am I at our sales and marketing? How good am I at our operations, right? How good are we? And we try to challenge those and move them all forward. And the same thing applies, I think, to a sales rep. Move them forward. Yeah. Just, it doesn't have to be, there's not an adrenaline shot. And I don't think there's a ton of shortcuts unless you can get lucky. You get lucky. Chance to get lucky.
Call it what it is. It's luck.
Yeah. Right. Right. But you kind of make some of that, through work. Sure. And yes, that's the thing. So,
yeah. Well, the last thing I'll touch on the comp plan is that any good sales rep in whatever industry is they take a look at the comp plan and they work themselves backwards, right? In order to maximize it. It's always intimidating January 1 to start at the bottom of the mountain. And in your industry, there's no carryover, fair? So with all that being said is, okay, well, look, this is a big, big T-bone that I've got to eat. Well, where are we going to start? It's one bite at a time, right? But when you break down that big quota that you have or how to maximize the comp plan, you've just got to start bite-sizing it, realizing a lot of it might be right there in front of you, and you just need a new part of the glacier. Exactly right. You just need one more of that chunk of ice to fall off onto your lap, but it's already there. You're already there, right? So, all right, just a couple of takeaways. We're going to go senior quote, but you did touch on a couple of books. I've got one that I'm obsessed with right now, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Just finished it in January. It's not January, but we were going for one a month. But basically, it's about not how much money you make; it's about how much money you keep. So, love that one. Any books that you would suggest, sales, life in general, before we go to your senior quote?
Yeah, they're I've read a couple of books in my life that I think are sort of thoughtful and not necessarily easy reads. So they're not all just the mush mash and feel good. One is called The Logic of Failure. It's by a guy named Dietrich Dorner. And it sort of is about organizations, people, and why they make errors, and sometimes really, really, severe errors. And one of my favorite chapters, and I'll give you a little look because it's worth reading, it takes apart what happened at Chernobyl minute by minute.
Jeez.
But here's the best part about that. When you get through it, you're going to realize, and this is the crazy part about human decision making, that everybody at Chernobyl was an expert and everybody at Chernobyl knew exactly what they were doing. And yet they created the worst nuclear accident in the history of mankind. And it's just amazing to think how that happened. And he does talk about that. And not only is it good from a life perspective when things get complicated, and it's good to read just in general. And if you're a business owner, it's good to read. It just gives you a different perspective. And the other one, and this is on the point of getting lucky, is called The Black Swan. And The Black Swan is a book that's not about dancing. There was a movie called The Black Swan. People get confused. This one's called The Black Swan. It's written by a guy named Nicholas Taleb. And Nicholas Taleb talks that there's two kinds of sort of industries. One is what he calls extremistan, and I'll tell you this as is the richest author in the world the best author? And by the way, the richest author in the world is J.K. Rowling, but would she ever be considered the best writer in history? No. And then you said same thing for actors. Is Tom Cruise, who may be, I think, the richest, is he the best? And it's not. And those are industries that have that kind of characteristic. And there's other industries that do not. And a little bit promo is this way, right? So you can only do, it's like so much promo until you need help and support. You cannot do $20 million of promo by yourself. You just don't have enough time in the day. And it just it does talk about how to give yourself those chances to be lucky and the statistical probabilities in the world. It'll make you think differently about the things you do in your life. And I think that's always cool when a book does that. So anyway, but that's, those are two I've read that I thought were fascinating, made me think a lot. There's some others too, but we'll go from there.
I love it. All right. And then for you, your senior quote, words you live by, quote you live by. And I know you're a big music buff, so I don't know if this is going to be a set of lyrics or what, but give me what you got.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sitting here and I probably should have looked back at the things I tend to say, but I do love the one, because this applies to sales and the businesses as well. But the best way to make money is don't lose any.
I love it. And
because it's amazing how often we give back, we leak. There's leakage. That's what I sort of look for in our world that I run. And same with our reps. It's amazing how you can have leakage, whether it's margin leakage or, a transactional error or whatever an AR issue or a payment issue or whatever the case may be. Just again, it's amazing if you just have that sort of attitude that you should not be in a position of not getting paid for the work that you do, right? You've invested in this knowledge base to be an expert in the promotional products. Don't be ashamed to get paid for it.
I love that. Barrett, you're fantastic. Really appreciate it. Hopefully everyone's able to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. And again, just appreciate your time. Appreciate the knowledge drop, the dollar breakdowns and all of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. It's great, man. Cheers.
And record.